Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the DEX Show. I'm Tom McGraw. I'm joined as ever by my main man, Tim Flower. How you doing, Tim?
Big Tom, I'm good. Hey, we always had in my previous roles, we always had a question: how long into the new year is it acceptable to continue to say Happy New Year?
Okay. So this really burst a fourth wall, right? Because I was giving this some thought before we recorded, and I was like, wait, when is this episode going live, Tim? So to the listeners, it's February. It's way too late to be
All right.
talking about 2025 and the beginning of. But to us, of course, we're recording this on January the 7th, okay, just to reveal it all to everybody. And so it is a pretty fresh new year. I think it's acceptable to you
All
and
right.
I, but I don't know if we should
Happy
steer
New Year
clear
to
of
you
going
and to
into it in
everybody.
any depth is my suggestion.
Got it. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. To the listeners, they're like, my God, it's February. Shut up about the new year.
Of course.
So let's crack on, gentlemen. What are we doing? So you've already heard from him, listeners. Our fantastic guest today is a digital experience director and employee experience evangelist, Anthony Firmin. Anthony, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Thanks very much, Tom and Tim. Great to be here.
Excellent. We have to sort of be a little bit sort of imprecise about your career, right? But it's really distinguished. Amazing experience at multiple world-leading brands, and you were focused on digital adoption and change at scale at one of what we will call the Big Four consultancy firms. Is that right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, very much, very very much on point there, Tom. So I guess a quick intro. So yeah, I'm Anthony Firmin. I've spent over 20 years now driving transformational change in global organizations with a deep focus, as you say, on digital adoption and on employee experience at scale. And most recently, I led global digital adoption and technology experience programs at, as you say, Big Four firm, enabling 450,000 employees across 150 countries. So
Wow.
some serious scale. And my passion really lies in blending data-led insights with human-centered design to create scalable, people-first solutions that I guess not only improve productivity but also make technology a seamless enabler of a great employee experience. And I guess to round off, I now freelance. I'm providing consulting and staff augmentation services around employee experience, digital adoption, and transformation.
Well, it's no accident we wanted you on the show, Anthony. Absolutely. Yeah. And I really feel that these are, regardless of your incredible experience there, these are huge themes for us, I think, and for the entire sort of DEX sector in 2025. I think digital adoption, digital transformation are going to be massive preoccupations for many professionals who listen to the show, and on the show itself, you'll hear a lot about it. So let's get right into it, Anthony. What do you see as the core principles for successfully driving digital adoption across an organization as large as the one you've just described?
Wow, you're not gently easing me in here,
No,
are you, Tom?
indeed.
I mean, this is a big question.
That's how the questions came to us. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge topic. I guess we could probably talk for hours, days, and weeks about it. But I think if I boil it down, firstly to one big theme, it's really about putting users at the center of everything you do. And on the face of it, I think that sounds kind of stupidly obvious. But when you're seeking to do so at scale, how on earth do you get human-centered? And I think to bring that enormous topic down, to boil it down to perhaps three key principles. The first would be harness the power of data. When operating at scale, it's your most powerful ally. Leverage telemetry, sentiment analysis, usage analysis. Oh God, can't even speak. Usage analytics, to understand your audience, understand what your employees need, how they work, and what gets in their way. And data is also critical in managing stakeholders. Objective insights rather than assumptions build credibility, whilst diminishing the effects of emotion and ego in decision making. So my advice there is let the data speak, make everything measurable, and use data as a shield and a sword. And obviously use data to measure success through well-defined KPIs, but also to adapt your campaign in real time. For example, to identify underused features or pain points in a given process, and then tailor your interventions to course correct. So that's really principle or sub-principle number one. Secondly, one size does not fit all. Employees operate in different roles in diverse contexts with unique needs and preferences. So segment users based on their needs, design tailored interventions and messages per segment, and also recognize the adoption curve within each segment, right? From innovators through to laggards. When devising your communication strategies, define what each adopter type should know, feel, and do at each stage of the campaign, because sending the same message to all essentially will be ineffective. And I think many shy away from segmentation as it's seen as too complex or maybe seen to be injecting delay into the schedule. But from my experience, the reality is if you invest time and effort in designing that segmentation approach up front, you'll inject rocket fuel into the adoption timeframe, and you'll reach the finish line faster.
I got to ask you, sorry to jump in again, Tim.
Yeah.
Really interested in what you said about one size fits all. We've had some conversations at NextThink recently about a term we're calling herd digital adoption,
Okay.
Obviously, you've been successful at implementing a more tailored approach to digital adoption, but it's a two-part question. Do you feel that the limits on that tailored approach is starting to evaporate a bit more? Like, were you constrained, say, 3-4 years ago, more than you would be now, to necessarily basically do it en masse? Second part of that, do you feel that with the wave of AI technology that's coming in, that approach becomes particularly outmoded?
So to answer the first question, we were absolutely our hands, if you like, were tied 3 or 4 years ago, significantly more than they would be today, with the advent of digital adoption platforms and so on and so forth. And the technology is moving so fast, which takes us into question around AI. Do I think that you're essentially asking, do we think the whole segmentation piece will disappear because of hyper personalization via AI? I think I could be wrong, but segmentations, I think, will always be necessary to a degree in order to tailor your communications, right? It's all very well having AI essentially deliver hyper personalization in a given platform or in a given product, but you still have to drive messaging, this sort of messaging wrapper around any particular change. And I think that the need to segment messaging will always be there. Yet to see whether or how long it takes AI to get us to a point where segmentation for I guess from a training perspective or for other change management interventions, whether it kind of takes over and removes the need to segment. But I always see it being there for the messaging side of change.
And even Gartner says AI in and of itself needs to be segmented, right? A rookie knowledge worker will look at an AI output and not be able to determine good from bad, where a very seasoned knowledge worker who's been in their role for decades will use AI and immediately know if they need to modify something or if it's good content. So even adopting AI in itself requires us to look at our subjects a little bit differently. Anthony, I looked online and I wanted to grab a couple of different definitions of digital adoption. It's 2 words. It can be interpreted many different ways. It boils down to the act of incorporating new digital tools and systems to improve work processes and achieve objectives. So use new things, do new things to achieve what you want to do. But I think it misses a key point in that process, which is the process of actually incorporating the change. You can roll out new technology, you can tell people to do something different, but until you really teach people and incorporate those changes into their DNA, it's not going to work. So it really it requires employees to learn something new and use it to its fullest capability. You've emphasized that digital adoption is a business issue and not just a technology issue. We tend to focus on the easy part. The tech is the easy part. The people are hard. Elaborate on the distinction and why that business side of adoption is so important.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, I guess the core of this is that technology is only as valuable as its adoption. You can have the best tools in the world, but if employees aren't using them effectively, they're just expensive shelfware. And IT organizations, they can't get away with that sort of build it and they will come mentality that leaves a hefty technology bill on the table with low value delivered. You have to step up and help the business to see the ROI. And I think viewing digital adoption as a business issue means aligning it with strategic goals, right? Measuring success in terms of business outcomes, and ensuring that leaders across both functions and geographies champion the change. And this perspective allows for a more holistic, outcome-driven approach, rather than treating adoption as an afterthought to implementation. And I think another kind of connected element to this, Tim, is that people say that change is the only constant. And I think that these days it's more appropriate to say that the acceleration of change is the only constant. It will never be as slow as yesterday. And the need for delivering change at both scale and at velocity is growing. And if an organization's been used to delivering major technology change over, say, a 2-year program lifecycle, don't expect that to be considered success tomorrow. So, I guess my message would be find out how to manage adoption at scale and velocity, because by the time you finish one deployment, you're probably going to be starting the effort to replace it.
And maybe a similar part B to that question is the lens that we look at adoption through. We usually look at it through the lens of IT. I tested a piece of software that's going to be beneficial to the business. I rolled it out successfully. There's no errors. There's no failures. There weren't as many calls to the help desk. But it may still not be used appropriately on the business side. How does the business lens change the approach that IT takes to technology adoption?
Okay, let me answer that with quite a pragmatic response. I think if you're leaving it to the temporary project and program structures to drive adoption, you will probably not be efficient. You'll certainly not accelerate your ability to successfully drive change, and your adoption outcomes will likely be suboptimal. My advice would be build an operational digital adoption capability that learns and adapts, rather than projects starting with a blank page each time and then going through their own learning curve. So for me, a persistent capability enables multiple advantages. Firstly, you can build organizational intelligence, right? Stakeholder understanding, which enables you to build better stakeholder relationships. Business intelligence, right, including cost sensitivity of different parts of the organization. What keeps leaders awake at night. Cultural intelligence, so understanding key cultural elements that need to be accounted for in your messaging and change campaigns. Understand which parts of the business have more of an innovative stance and will welcome being early adopters of new technology versus those that are more conservative. Building change management intelligence, so which interventions and communication styles work and don't work, right? Understanding the internal policies and ways of working that either block or support change efforts. Having and building a line of sight across all major change. Can the business swallow it all? Are there opportunities to remove duplication or find synergies and combine change efforts? But also, repeatability and efficiency. So if you want to scale, if you want to do things faster, you have to build repeatable methods, processes, tools, templates, and also leverage the volume of change that the team handles to negotiate better terms for internal approvals or to influence those policies that get in the way. And I think the final element is really around what I call data muscle. So ensure that capability has access to data and data analytics capabilities, or they either have them under their control or fully accessible. And I think something that takes time but yields immense value is getting smart at applying a business lens to data, right? So you can quickly separate signals from the noise. So by industrializing the digital adoption and change capability, there you can scale, increase velocity, continuously find ways to increase value and decrease cost, and therefore improve unit rates. And by doing so, you'll generate greater ROI and drive better business outcomes.
I think the concept of perpetual adoption, perpetual enablement, I want to highlight that with something that you said in there.
Sure.
Not relying on the temporary project to enable your people to do the work. That project has a specific goal, which is to get the rollout done, and then they move on to the next one. So you've got to have some way of ongoing training. Our process was, if it was complicated enough, send the entire department down to the learning lab and train them a kind of a one-time training. Here's how you use it. Now go back to your desk. Not only is it not effective, but it's not efficient or sustainable to send thousands of people down to training and get them out of their role for a day or more to go learn something that's not going to stick. And especially compound that now with the rate of change. You're going to be in training all the time. So we've got to find a different way to adopt all of this change without disrupting the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you say, you can't do that where you have hundreds of thousands of employees. And as I say, it's about this perpetual capability that is constantly learning, constantly improving. And it's not to say that project or program structures can't do a good job. What I'm saying is that with the pace of change, the acceleration of change, those temporary structures just they will not in the longer term enable that enable change at the scale and velocity that the world will be demanding at that point.
Yeah. So you've written about combining employee listening with data insights, because it's not just the data, it's the insights we get from that data, both from the collected metrics, the traditional data, as well as the listening analysis, the listening insights. And those two combined are required for a human-centered approach. How do the elements work together to create that effective digital adoption strategy?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the three elements they're deeply interconnected. Employee listening tells you, what people are experiencing and feeling. Data insights show you how they're actually behaving with the technology. And a human-centered approach really ensures that you design solutions that address the needs and the pain points identified in the qualitative and quantitative insights. For example, we might see through analytics that a tool isn't being adopted, and the employee listening might tell us why. Maybe it's too complex, or it's not integrated into their workflows. Human-centered design ensures that the solutions are essentially built around those real needs, and very, very importantly, that you then validate those solutions with real employees. Right? You don't. It's not built around assumptions.
So Tom touched on it earlier in our conversation. We can't go an episode without talking about AI. It's everywhere, right? And AI is trying its hardest to be human. How do you see AI influencing the digital adoption space in the coming years, especially when we're even struggling just to adopt AI efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked earlier about the need to move away from one size fits all. I guess, to cut a very long story short, I think AI will progressively enable hyper-personalization at scale, as we touched upon earlier. I think moving forward, I see AI kind of profiling an organization's user base, using relevant attributes to a given set of technology needs, automating segmentation, offering recommendations into change management strategies. And I think AI will get better at predicting adoption friction points and drop-off areas before they become, widespread issues, thereby enabling proactive intervention. And I see AI playing a bigger role in adaptive learning paths, delivering real-time, context-aware guidance tailored to individual user roles, preferences, and behaviors. And I think, probably with everything to do with AI, the key is going to be balancing AI automation with the human touch, right, to ensure that technology feels intuitive and isn't intrusive.
The MS Teams adoption project you previously led was one of the largest imaginable, certainly in the world, covering 150 countries and almost 500,000 employees.
Wow.
What were some of the key challenges in scaling
I can't
such a
imagine.
huge initiative, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, again, how long have you got? The scale alone was a huge challenge, aligning 150 countries, multiple languages, diverse cultural contexts. It isn't easy. I think another challenge was balancing global consistency with local flexibility, ensuring that we had a unified strategy while allowing local teams to adapt, based on their unique needs. And we tackled it by applying all of the points I made earlier around, leveraging data, segmenting the employee base, and tailoring messaging and interventions to each segment, as well as applying the principle of reaching employees in a time and place relevant to them. Perhaps we can come back to that. But additionally, we built a global champions network of about 1,500 employees who acted as local advocates. And by using really real-time analytics to identify adoption gaps early and address them proactively. For example, users are really quick to use Teams chat, but there was this really low uptake of channel chat in the beginning. And we quickly saw this trend through telemetry data. We spun up a campaign purely around the benefits of channel chat, how to get started. And we primed that champion network to really focus in on channel chat from a bottom-up perspective, providing local guidance and collecting qualitative feedback from users, and then sharing it back to the program team to enable us to further tailor our communications and our interventions. And I guess, within, crikey, it was about 2 weeks of the campaign beginning, or not beginning, but being executed, we saw the number of users leveraging channel chat increase by over 130,000. So, a good example of how that sort of employee listening, leveraging data, and then responding very proactively to it in terms of your messaging and campaign interventions really generates incredibly powerful results.
Does that answer the question around, I know you're writing for the Hub on extending IT scope, human-centered design, and voice of the employee. Is there anything you'd add to what you just said that kind of elaborates on that theme a little more?
Yeah, so, voice of employee listening, it aims to understand employee experience through surveys, interviews, data analysis. It aims to understand their experiences, their needs, their challenges. And I think, employee experience is the sum of every interaction that an employee has with their employer, from being a candidate through to offboarding and beyond as an alum. And, these touch points shape perceptions of the organization, and they place a ceiling on productivity. So, employee experience is really driven from 3 key areas in an organization. Firstly, culture. Secondly, the physical spaces that the employees interact with. And thirdly, the technology that they interact with. And as you'll feel through the DEX space, technology is a bigger driver of overall employee experience than it ever has been now. And, the culture and the physical spaces are increasingly delivered or enhanced through technology. So experience gaps, i.e., moments where reality falls short of expectations, can seriously erode business value. And I think to make things harder, employee expectations are constantly increasing, as consumer experience elevates, because consumer experience is setting the bar for enterprise experience, particularly when it comes to technology. So given all of that, it's really my belief that IT shouldn't just exist to provide tools to support and enable the business. It has this fundamental purpose in enabling an exceptional employee experience, and in doing so, driving additional strategic business value.
Excellent. Any other examples of innovation in which you've leveraged employee feedback to kind of inform and refine technology experience strategies?
Yeah, of course. So I think our voice of employee listening was pretty innovative to start with. So I'll start there and then go on to an additional example. So, my team conducted regular quantitative and qualitative research around technology experience and satisfaction from all the way up from the overall technology experience level down to individual products and services. And we created an employee-centric common data model that integrated over 20 data sources, including NextThink, Office 365, ServiceNow ticket data, as well as our qualitative and quantitative research data. And by bringing it all together into one place, it enabled us to apply really quite sophisticated analytics and to correlate telemetry data with employee sentiment. And that really gave us gold when it came to technology experience insights. And I guess in terms of putting the feedback to use, one example was around optimizing devices for a hybrid working model where devices included laptops, monitors, audio and video devices, keyboard, mouse, etc., as well as the acquisition and support experiences or wrapper that surround them. And I guess the problem was that despite huge investment, satisfaction with devices globally was very low. The global average had an NPS of around -12, some countries down to around -50. So pretty challenging stats. And starting with laptop performance, when I looked at the workloads put through them, we identified that about 220,000 machines were over-spec'd for the typical workloads, about 150,000 were right-sized, and about 80,000 were under-spec'd. And by targeting the right spec device to the right employee, we could essentially increase overall employee satisfaction while saving $40 million per year, so not to be sniffed at. And also analyze PC performance by age. And we had around 90,000 machines older than the typical 3-year asset life. And interestingly, more than half of those, about 48,000, were still performing really, really well. Which offered the opportunity to extend the life of those machines, saving an additional $8 million per year. And another thing we did, we conducted extensive research globally. We analyzed about 20 billion data elements to create a segmentation model for devices and device needs. And we identified a hierarchy of needs for each segment, consisting of about 7 layers. So we had laptop performance, we had connectivity, we had well-being, we had human interaction, we had display real estate and configuration, we had mobility and brand stroke image. And that brand stroke image had 2 lenses. One was really the marketplace brand, so facing out to clients, and the other was the internal employer brand perception. And this enabled us to solution the devices offering per segment to optimize productivity and satisfaction. It took an awful lot of hard work, being candid, and a lot of crunching of the gray matter. I used to come back with some severe headaches at the end of some of these days, but we unearthed immense value. And from discussions that I've had with multiple people in multiple organizations, I get this sense that the employee experience pennies dropped, right? It's gaining attention and momentum at senior levels. So I do think we're going to see this sort of employee experience DEX, start to snowball in the coming years.
Anthony, one word I haven't heard you use in that conversation is persona. Do you think they're synonymous, or is there an intentional move away from that because it's gotten a bad rap? So many people have failed over the years. What's your thought on that concept of personas?
Sure. I mean, I'm not an expert on personas, Tim, but what I will say, my understanding is that level 1 is segmentation. So you leverage data to understand correlation, if you like. So looking at various attributes, where are there clusters of similarity between between users? You then have an opportunity, having done that, to overlay persona to sort of bring it to life, right? To make it more digestible and perhaps more meaningful to others. So you can take those segments, you can overlay personas that and create, day in the life of, and all sorts of artifacts that really help bring to life who these groups are and what the sort of key attributes of those groups are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Sure.
You've definitely whet my appetite, Anthony, to hear the articles that are apparently heading to the DEX Hub. I hope they are. One is, as I mentioned, extending IT scope, human-centered design and voice of employee, which we've covered a lot there. And the other is on the largest MS Teams adoption project in the world. Are these underway, Anthony? We need them.
They are, yeah, they absolutely are. They're on their way. I'd probably have to turn to you to understand when, but absolutely.
Fantastic news. And final question, since it is January the 7th / February, gotta ask you for a New Year's prediction. Probably be the last one our listeners hear at this point, but I think it's just about early. Not too late for Happy New Year in February, but not too late for a New Year's prediction, I hope.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stay away from AI predictions, I think. So I kind of touched on this earlier. I think and I hope that 2025 is poised to be the year when technology and HR leaders truly align to elevate employee experience. To do so as a shared strategic priority, because with hybrid work models, digital tools, and employee expectations evolving rapidly, I think the collaboration between these two functions will become essential. And what's on the table here in terms of opportunity is the ability to attract and retain top talent, to boost productivity, to enhance employee engagement and satisfaction, and really to drive better customer outcomes. So in short, I think I hope 2025 could mark the beginning of employee experience being viewed not just as an HR initiative, but as a critical business strategy where technology and people functions unite to deliver lasting impact. Because in my experience, I think still today, technology and HR are too siloed around this, and I think there is huge opportunity if we can bring the two together.
100%. Anthony, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming. That was a great convo.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.